Hello, everybody. My name is Jacqueline Patone, and I'm a career development counselor here at the Career Center at UNCW. I also am the career counselor that works very closely with Watson College of Education. So I'm really excited to be presenting to you all today, and also hope and look forward to meeting all of you in the future as it relates to anything career related. I do have a presentation on resume and cover letters, and I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with all of you and kind of talk through the basics of resumes and cover letters and how you all can stand out as future educators. Alrighty. So first and foremost, I want to give you a little bit of an overview of resumes. So again, how long does an employer take to review a resume? And to be honest, it actually is 15 seconds or less. So that is extremely quick. So with that in mind, it is extremely important to have some key things on your resume and for your resume. So I'm going to start with the format. We definitely want it to be consistent and uniform. Please do not use a template. I know it's very easy to download one, but you'll find that a bunch of you will use the same template, or they're just really hard to edit and they're not very user-friendly. So I definitely recommend starting from scratch. And I'll show you a sample resume later on in our presentation of a good and uniform format. It should have a summary of your background and your qualifications and your different experiences. So again, what makes you stand out as a candidate? So easy to read and scan. So with being 15 seconds or less, am I able to pick out key skills and qualifications? You definitely do not need to put your life story in your resume, contrary to popular belief. Spell checked and error-free document. So if you have an error on your document, it can be discarded before an employer even goes through it. And then also you want it to be recently updated. So your resume is a working document. You are constantly adding things to it. You also might have different versions of your resume depending on the job that you are applying for. So continuing on with my overview, a resume can include anything you have done, but it does not have to include everything. So really think about relevant experiences that you have and target words and phrases that school systems can really connect with. I'll talk a little bit more about what you should include in terms of your various subheaders. For the major features, your resume should typically be one page of relevant information, but it can go on to 2 pages. But again, it needs to be a full 2 pages and it needs to be relevant information. And we'll kind of talk through the different subheaders throughout our presentation on what to include and maybe what not to include as well. And with that, no complete sentences or paragraphs. So again, when you're only looking at a resume for 15 seconds, you want to be able to pick out key things very easily and very quickly. You also don't need to use personal pronouns, so the words I throughout your resume, it's already about you, so you don't need to do that. And then in terms of font size, anywhere between 10 and 12, pretty conservative fonts, again, Times New Roman, Calibri, those different ones, because again, it is a pretty conservative formal document, so you don't need to have all the bells and whistles. So for some of the sections that are required on your resume, you absolutely do need personal data. So your name, your contact information, a LinkedIn profile, a personal website that you might have been using, but definitely your contact information. Also an objective statement. What type of position are you looking for? What are you applying for? And be specific in your objective. And then education. So please list out all of your education credentials from most recent down with the exclusion of high school information, and then your experience. And your experience can range anywhere from professional experience, so student teaching, relevant experience, maybe you were a tutor or you worked in a lab, and then also additional experience, what can be anything that's still highlighting transferable skills or things to make you stand out in the world of teaching. So sections on your resume that are optional, but also encouraged if they really are helping you stand out as a candidate, but just a couple of them. So a summary of your qualifications. So maybe you have a demonstrated history of teaching or of childcare, or if you're changing industries and you want to highlight that, and relevant skills and qualifications right at the very top of your resume, kind of a teaser of some things that they might see later on in your resume as well. Honors and awards, any distinctions in those areas, as well as volunteer experience or anything out in the community, certifications and license, any professional associations that you might be a part of, any publications, presentations, campus involvement, and also military experience. This is just a small list of things that you can include on your resume, but again, all of these things have value and can showcase different parts of who you are and your skills and qualifications, and what also might make you stand out from other candidates applying for a similar position. Things not to include, and I know this kind of might seem like common sense, but you'd be very surprised with how often you see these in resumes. So you don't need your photo, anything about your age, your religion, anything that might be controversial. You definitely don't need your course numbers. You can list your courses throughout your resume in relevant coursework section, but you want to list out the title of the course because that makes more sense to an employer. Statements such as duties include or responsible for, we want you to be more specific and to use action verbs, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. And then also, high school information is not needed anymore, especially your involvement in high school. It's just not going to matter as much to an employer as the things that you are currently doing within your student teaching and your internships and your field experience. Also, just any involvements in college are going to be more significant. And then I already mentioned it earlier, but personal pronouns, you do not need the word I throughout your resume, and it's a very common thing, but again, your resume is about you, so you don't need to have those words in there. So things to consider when you're describing your experiences, because again, all of you are going to be doing a ton of things before you graduate, but how can you narrow that down and make it relevant to an employer? So specific attributes, experience, and skills. So did you work on plays, musicals, field trips, all those different components? Special populations you've worked with is huge. That does not just include like grade levels, but also are there any physical or visual impairments, English as a second language learners, with gifted students, any of those components to really diversify your experiences. And then also different ways of integrated or different ways of teaching. Did you use integrated curriculum? What does that look like? Parent conferences, interactions with parents, IEPs, 504s, and also professional conferences or associations. You can even include information on in-service trainings that you've received or professional development days. You would just want to be specific and highlight those. How are you evaluating student progress? And did you have any extra duties? Playground, lunchroom, study hall, how did you supervise students? Again, these are just just a small amount of things that you might want to highlight when you are adding bullet points to all of your different experiences, again, to help you stand out potentially from other candidates. So again, for your sections, you want to have bullet points and you really want to avoid paragraph format. Again, your middle sentence in a paragraph could be really important, but because I only spend 10 to 15 seconds, I might not even see that. So it's just a helpful way to be organized and succinct with the data that you're putting on your resume. Also, starting each line with an action verb. I mentioned seeing our career planning guide, which is a link on our website that has tons of information related to resume, cover letters, and the job search. But also has a list of action verbs. I'll also show you some on the next slide. And then tailoring your skills and experiences to the position. So really highlighting the positions that really help you stand out. And you might have different versions of your resume depending on the school system or the position that you are applying for. And then also being concise while providing enough detail, I think is huge. Oftentimes we see resumes that are 2 pages that could easily be condensed to 1 by being concise and specific. So as mentioned earlier, here is a list of different action verbs. And the beauty of action verbs is that they're also describing a certain skill set that you all will have as teachers. And this is just a quick little list. I'm going to leave it on there for a quick second just to see if any of them might jump out at you. But for the most part, this is how you're going to want to start the majority of your bullet points, because again, it is highlighting a skill set. And this is broken down into different skills, so management, organization, and communication. I will also provide your instructor with a copy of this PowerPoint as well, so you can have access to this. And then lastly, this is just a sample resume of an education student. So just what it looks like, a clear and objective, their education, their relevant experience, their teaching experience. And it's okay to have a lot of bullet points underneath your teaching experience, because again, those are the most relevant things for an employer. And then also volunteer experience at the bottom. I always tell students, think about your resume similar to a newspaper article. You have the most relevant information at the top, and then you're going to continuously move down your resume with additional information. But by having the most relevant information at the top, you're ensuring that an employer is not missing those key things and those key qualifications. I talked your ear off about resumes, and I'm just going to give you a brief introduction to cover letters, because yes, they are very important in your job search. I think a cover letter in general really provides you the opportunity to introduce yourself and provide specific examples of your experience and your qualifications. It's definitely not a regurgitation of your resume, but it's a way to enhance it and be more specific and add more depth to who you are as a potential candidate. And you can really showcase your personality this way as well. I also think it is a really great way to showcase your writing ability. I've seen really well-written cover letters, and I've seen ones that really didn't enhance a person's qualification, and more times than not, those got discarded to the side. Lastly, it also can justify any gaps in your resume or even changing different industries. So say you were in IT for 10 years, but you're moving into teaching, you could include a little bit of information in there on why you made that switch. So again, cover letters are really valuable if done well, and we'll talk more about that. A little bit of an overview. First and foremost, always send a cover letter. They're such an important part of the job search for all the reasons that I listed before. But with that being said, it does take a little bit of work to write one because you do want a different cover letter for each school and position that you are applying to. You might have different versions of your cover letter similar to a resume. You want it to be easy to read and also in a professional format that matches kind of your resume. So the same header that you have at the top of your resume, you can just copy and paste that and have that be the header of your cover letter as well. You only want it to be one page. It can be anywhere between 3 and 4 paragraphs, but you absolutely do not want to go beyond that. You want to use your own words and not be too repetitive. And I cannot stress this enough, but proofread. I know there is a grammatical error on there, but that was intentional to just showcase how easy it is to miss spelling or grammatical errors. So absolutely have someone review your documents, whether that's myself at the Career Center or one of your peers or a professor. It's always good to have multiple eyes on your documents. And then lastly, you want to end on a good note, but we'll talk more about that. So in terms of the format, this is a very brief introduction to cover letters. There is more information and more samples on the career planning guide that I mentioned on our website. So for the opening paragraph, you're going to talk about why you're writing, absolutely state the position that you're writing for first and foremost, and really grab the employer's attention. How did you hear about this position? Who referred you? This is an opportunity for you to name drop somebody as well. You also can learn something about the institution that you're applying for. What is something that interests you? Why this company? You can include a little bit of a blurb about that to personalize that opening paragraph a little bit more. And then for the second paragraph, which also can be broken into 2, that's where 4 paragraphs come into play. But really what this is is a summary of your resume and skills experiences that are valuable to the school, and your place to use specific examples. I cannot stress that enough. You are not just listing out information, you are providing specific examples, because I do think that this shouldn't be a regurgitation of your resume, it's enhancing that document. You want to get the employer's attention. You can highlight special accomplishments or achievements that you might have had within your teaching experiences thus far. You want to display enthusiasm, but also do not start every sentence with I. It's really, really easy to do that because you're talking about yourself, but essentially, even though this is about you, this document is not for you. It is really what you can add to an employer, what value can you showcase to make you be a candidate for their position. And then the last paragraph, I hate to say it, but it is a little bit cookie cutter and across the board can be very similar for all different positions. You're thanking them, you're wrapping up, you might be restating, I do feel based on my qualifications, I'm a great fit for this position, but definitely include some contact information and how they can best get a hold of you in terms of the next steps of the process. So I know I breezed through this presentation and I really just grazed the surface of all there is to resumes and cover letters because it's going to look different depending on who you are and what positions that you're applying for. So if you would like more help on this, please make an appointment at the Career Center with myself. I would love to chat with you about your experiences and how you can best market yourself for jobs that you're interested in. But we also do have Career Express hours, Monday through Friday, 2 to 4, and Wednesday, Thursday, 9 to 11, which are just short, quick 15-minute appointments with different advisors in our office, and it can really help you get started on your resume and cover letter, or just any general questions that you might have. Again, I know that was really quick, but I am here if you have any questions. I will be sure to include my contact information as well. Thank you again, and I hope you all learned something, and I hope I see you soon.